All right, fifth graders, this is our social studies lessons for the day. So you're going to watch this video of me teaching you about different things about age of exploration, and then you will fill out the answers on this study guide. There are 6 questions, and it should be pretty easy as long as you watch my video, and it's something I'm super passionate about, and I really like you guys learning about. So I hope you find it somewhat interesting. So the last time that we were doing social studies, we talked about a man named Cortez, who was a Spanish explorer who wasn't really the best person. He conquered the Aztecs, and they were a big civilization in Mexico. And he wasn't the greatest to the Native American people, and he kind of destroyed their whole civilization. So not all things about the age of exploration are good. So that's important for me to start with, because when we're colonizing different people, sometimes we destroy cultures that would have been pretty awesome otherwise. So first we have to know why. Why did people start exploring the world? Well, there was this time period called the Renaissance. Remember, there was lots of art. People started drawing and painting. Some different navigational tools were invented, like the compass, and then also the printing press, which allowed books to be published. So people read about these places and they wanted to travel more. People started forming new religions, so they started believing in different things. And they were able to figure out locations on Earth using latitude and longitude, and invention of ships called caravels made it easier for them to travel. So the first explorer that we learn about is Christopher Columbus. And I don't know if you guys have heard the poem, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. So Columbus was this guy right here, and I'm sure you've heard of Columbus Day. He's credited with being the first person from Europe to discover the Americas. There's some bit of debate back and forth if he really discovered the Americas or not, but he was kind of the person that set the whole age of exploration into motion, because people saw him go to the Americas and they're like, well, why don't we go? So the first people that kind of got into exploring were the Spanish. So we're going to talk today mostly about the Spanish explorers. So in 1519, Cortez conquered the Aztecs. So he was kind of the first big explorer that went and conquered this civilization. And remember, he pretended to be a god, and he captured their leader, Montezuma, and then disease, and eventually killed the rest of the Aztecs, which made it easier for him to explore. So that was in the year 1519. Then in 1540, De Soto, a man named Hernando de Soto, began exploring, and he discovered this little state called Florida. And he actually was looking for something called the Fountain of Youth. So if you've ever seen the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, they talk about in one of the movies the Fountain of Youth. And he believed in that, and so he thought he could find it in Florida. Well, he ended up getting really lost and not ever really finding a Fountain of Youth, but he did say that Florida was very beautiful, and he ended up causing more people to want to explore because he found Florida. All right, so we're going to watch a video together called The Conquistadors. So that is what the Spanish explorers were called, conquistadors, and it's right here, because that's the Spanish word which means to conquer. So they were going to conquer all the people. So let's watch the video and see what we learn here.
It's a 15th century Inca city, built more than a mile up in the mountains. Dear Tim and Moe, who conquered the Inca and Aztec empires? And how did they manage to defeat such powerful civilizations? From Panfilo. Well, Panfilo, learning the answer to that question was precisely the point of our trip to Peru. Well, yeah, it would have been pretty cool to see it at its height, but since it's been 500 years... Are you sure that's a good idea? This is amazing. What year is it? 1532 is the year Francisco Pizarro defeated Atahualpa, the Inca emperor.
So that is another Spanish explorer. His name is Pizarro. So he was one of the people that was pretty famous because he conquered this whole empire that was really cool, and they built really cool things.
Oh, Pizarro was a conquistador. That's a Spanish word that
That's another word. There it is again, conquistador.
It means conqueror. The conquistadors were Spanish and Portuguese soldiers who traveled to the Americas to colonize it. They were violent and ruthless with the native people they encountered. Thousands were murdered, and thousands more were forced into slavery.
So, a big thing to remember about the Spanish is they were not good to Native American people. They came, they stole their land, they put them into slavery, and made them work. So, they took them and made them slaves for their colonies. And as you can see, they took their gold. Spanish were all about gold. They wanted all the gold that they could find in America.
A lot of factors came together to make the conquest possible. Christopher Columbus had just arrived in the Americas, opening the door for other Europeans to follow him. The continent was rich in natural resources, especially precious metals like silver and gold. Conquistadors saw a fantastic opportunity to gain wealth and power. They also sought glory for their home countries. Their missions were sponsored by kings and queens who were also hungry for money and power. Back then, the major European countries were competing against each other to form the biggest, richest empire, and they were setting up American colonies as fast as they could. The idea was that whoever got the most land and the most loot could dominate the others. You're right, religion was also a major factor. Christian kings and queens wanted more Christians, along with gold and land. So the conquistadors were followed by priests whose job was converting the native people to Christianity. If anyone refused, punishment came down hard. Even though they were always outnumbered, the conquistadors managed to overpower mighty empires. Like here in 1532, Pizarro had fewer than 200 soldiers. The Incas outnumbered him 10 to 1. But he had steel swords, horses, and firearms, while the Incas only had bronze weapons and stone knives. The conquistadors also had an additional invisible weapon. Sicknesses like smallpox had been around for centuries.
So the conquistadors were in the middle of a pandemic. The conquistadors would come and bring their diseases and would kill all the Native American people. So they were so sick they couldn't even fight back. So kind of similar to what we're going through right now is they would get a new disease that they'd never experienced. In our case, it was COVID. In the Native Americans' case, it was smallpox, which is a disease that we have a vaccine or a shot for today so that people don't die from it. But a lot of people back then, they didn't have shots. So they brought this ugly, nasty disease over. It killed a lot of their people, and then they couldn't fight back when they tried to take over their empire.
Centuries in Europe, but were completely unknown in the Americas. The native people were defenseless against these microscopic invaders and died by the thousands. In 1521, disease helped Hernan Cortez defeat the Aztec Empire in Mexico. He captured their capital city with an effective military strategy, but also because smallpox had already killed so many Aztecs. Once the native people had been conquered, their lands were seized. They became colonies of Spain and Portugal, which is why most people in Latin America speak Spanish or Portuguese today. The native people were enslaved. They were forced to work in mines, in rich Europeans' homes, and on big plantations called encomiendas. The Spanish Empire became the largest and most powerful in the world, but it didn't last forever. By the end of the night,
all right, we're going to stop there. So I know this video is kind of longer, but it's a social studies lesson, so I need you guys to watch all of it. Now you're going to go answer the questions, and if you're confused, let me know.